It's great to see you all here. Um, my name is Denali and I'm a codependent. This is probably the third time I've done a presentation for CoDA, and I have to say that there's definitely progress in recovery because I'm a lot less nervous this time. But I do have some social phobia because I still have little heartbeat skips as I'm getting ready to present, even though you all are very safe. But I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for all the help I've received to get to where I am today. I've been in the program for 4 years. Um, and so my intention today is to share from my experience in hopes that I will at least help one person here. That that would be awesome. And I have basically what I'm going to be talking about is we're going to start with higher power. And I'm going to ask you to also interact with me when I ask you to contribute to this presentation. I'll have Michael, I guess, have you raise your hand and he can open up your mic and then you can contribute. And we'll do that a few times. And then I'm going to be talking about the patterns for sure. And then this whole idea of values. So, and the patterns being for anyone who's fairly new, the patterns of codependency and recovery that is read at most meetings, right? I don't know, it wasn't read today, but it's definitely read in the meetings I go to. So let me just get started. I have a little slide presentation and I will definitely let you know where I would like you to participate. So let me open up the screen sharing here. So you all can see that okay? Great. So now I can't see you, but I will come in and out of the slides so that I can see you at certain times. HP being higher power, my values in me. And I really liked it just because it's kind of cute the way it sounds. But this this talk was hard for me to title because there's so many aspects to it. Higher power is a huge topic. And then my values for me is an even bigger topic, or maybe about the same. So we'll be talking about both those things. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get started and have, let's just talk about higher power. And I know it's a huge topic. So higher power, what is higher power? And from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions workbook and step 2, page 21, it says higher power is trust. Also says the harmony of the universe, the power of meetings, God, love, nature, a pet. I put that in there. And even an old shoe. So given that higher power is so vast and so much a part of the foundation of this program, I am curious about what today in your own recovery is your higher power. And at this point, if you want to raise your hand, I'm going to go ahead and type your answers while you're saying what your higher power is. And it may be just a few words or one word that might encompass what your higher power is. So what is higher power to you, as you're maybe even the thing about higher power is that, a huge part of this program for me anyway is, in the 4 years I've been in the program, it's so much about discovering what my higher power is, and it changes all the time. So, and I have to say, it's really difficult to name it in words. It really is for me. I'm going to add something that I heard from another meeting the other day, which is inner promptings. And I thought it was interesting because it's not necessarily an external experience of a higher power, but it's more of a trusting space of what's going on the inside. And then I just sort of played around with this HP as helpful promptings. And I don't even know if that's where I'm going to stay with HP, but it was fun to kind of think, well, what could I do with HP? All right. Are there any other thoughts about higher power or God? Because the word God is definitely used in the literature. This list, isn't that amazing that there's so many different thoughts about higher power just in this room? It's really wonderful. So we'll come back to this. I did some searching around to help me understand more about the many ways that people experience higher power. And on the CoDA.org website, there's actually a form called religious identification, and it gives this sort of a preamble. Like, I think that was the first paragraph. It gives these thoughts. CoDA is a spiritual, not a religious program. CoDA does not affiliate with any organization, religious or otherwise. And the choice of how one defines God is entirely up to the individual. All people are welcome as CoDA members, whether agnostic, atheist, or practicing a religion. Inclusiveness is the goal. This includes respecting one another's religious identification or non-identification. So that was really helpful for me. And so I just wanted to cover that, and we'll come back to it. So in my recovery, when I was early in recovery, and whenever the patterns were read, you've all seen this. This is the way, or somehow this is in one form or another shows up on the screen when we do read through the patterns in our meetings. And I always thought to myself, well, how do you get from the left to the right? Like there's, I wanted the operations manual, and I'm like, well, what the heck? It's like somebody left out the how to column. It's like, where is that? Because of course I wanted recovery to be really, really easy. So, to me, it always felt a little intimidating, a little bit like a Pong game, where I always felt like my codependency patterns were winning and I couldn't quite get over to the right. So I stayed long enough to just patiently be part of the process. And thank goodness I stayed. And I guess that's the one thing that I definitely want to say is that you all just keep coming back, because the surprise, right, shows up as we return to meetings. So what I've learned over the years is that in the patterns of codependence often, and then we read a pattern, and in recovery, we read the recovery pattern. There's that line is actually the how to, and it's just, it's like showing up. It's listening to others. It's coming to meetings. It's pulling in from the wisdom of the Code of Fellowship. As one person was saying, it's the experience, strength, and hope that we get from program. It's trying new actions and behaviors. Like for me right now to talk, it's doing a little bit of service work, and maybe it's like doing the IT. It's also for me meditation. It's meditation and prayer, and then feeling my feelings. Even doing this talk and having heart palpitations before starting, it's like, well, something's trying to communicate with me, and it's okay for me to feel my feelings. And especially in these rooms, it's okay for me to say those out loud to you all, because I have found nothing but safety. I mean, except for the occasional bomber, I have found safety in these rooms. But something was missing, and I couldn't quite figure it out. Like, what is it that with all these tools, why is it that I kept slipping in my codependent patterns? I had done co-sponsorship with 2 people. I'm now sponsoring 2 other people. And there was just something that wasn't making any sense. And then in my sponsorship of these 2 people, I realized that I was being asked to look further in how was it that I was moving from the left to the right, right? How was I doing that? And in sponsorship, it's service that it feels like a big responsibility, but it's actually something very, very rewarding. And in sponsorship, I am learning all the time. One of my current sponsees asked me to, in a 4-step, and let me just come off screen for a minute. So she asked me in a 4-step, as we were doing the 5th step, and actually completed the 5th step, she said, so what is it with this list of positive attributes? Can we do a list of positive attributes? because the fourth step was about creating a table, going through the patterns, writing out how she had harmed herself, how she had harmed others, and then to say something about her growth in the program. But she said to me, what's with this positive attributes list? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, where are you seeing that? And she read further into the workbook and was able to show me 2 pages that I actually had skipped over in my other co-sponsorship relationships. And I was so grateful to her because it led me to this answer of what was missing in my recovery, the how-to of my recovery. And so let me just go back to the screen and I'll show you what we discovered together. And I can't say enough that being a sponsor really has so many rewards. Even if I don't feel prepared, if I've worked the 12 steps, it's time for me to return the gift. And so what we discovered in, yet again, the 12 steps and 12 traditions workbook, in the 4th step section on page 49, is that we also need to explore our strengths, assets, and positive behaviors. And we did that. She and I did that in the table of the patterns. And then it says, we can make a list to identify our positive, healthy, appropriate, and loving behaviors. And we hadn't done that. So we read further, and on page 54, it says, in this moment, I am willing to see myself as I truly am. And let me just say again, we had already done the 4th and the 5th step. In this moment, I am willing to see myself as I truly am, a growing, unfolding spiritual being. I separate who I am from what I've done, knowing that the real me is emerging, loving, joyful, and whole. So the real me, I was really curious about that, not the version of me that was obsessive or is and can be obsessive, compulsive, and delusional, but the real me. And so I became really curious, like, how do I get in touch with the real me? And for me, it is so much about those inner promptings. It's so much about what is going on inside of me. And that's very difficult for me to stick with. I can beat myself up endlessly, but I am not as skillful at sticking with the positive aspects of who I am and loving myself and being kind to myself to figure out who I really am in all the positive ways. So we got really curious and we went online and we pulled up this list of positive qualities and characteristics. And, it's not a conference approved piece of literature. I looked it up on CoDA.org, but you can find a list of positive qualities and characteristics anywhere on the internet right now. And I mean, when I saw the list, of course I was kind of shocked. So I'm kind of wondering, so this is the next question that I have, and I'm going to go ahead and come off camera again. So just raise your hand. You don't have to raise your actual Zoom hand, but just raise your hand if you're on camera. And how many of you have actually made a positive attributes list in your recovery? That's great. So you didn't skip pages 49 and 54. We can be in such a hurry to do recovery even. I think that it's easy to skip pages. All right, so here's my other question. How many have you in your lifetime done a values list? Like made a list of your values? Okay, I see 1, 2, 3. Looks like 3 hands. or have heard of a values list, or were given the assignment to do a values list and thought it was insane and weird. Oh, there's more. Yeah, values list can seem kind of daunting. A lot like a lot like this list of the positive attributes that I found. It's like, no, I don't want to do that much work. But I have to tell you, we had the best discussion, me and my sponsee. We had the best discussion about this. So what we did is let's see, let me get the next slide. I said to her, well, how isn't positive attributes, aren't they kind of like values? Like it's an adjective and a noun, right? It's like, how are they any different? And it just so happened that I personally was attending a meditation group that really hones in on values. And so I was already kind of using values to get through a lot of really sticky places in my recovery, to move from the left to the right column. I just didn't really understand that that's what I was doing until my fourth year, that, oh, wait, this stuff can help me move from the left to the right. So one of my core values happens to be connection. And the positive attribute, you might say, is I'm a connector, and how can that not be positive? I want to connect with people. And so my value is connection. She said one of hers is she's been told she's kind. And I said, well, the value then could be kindness. I wanted to be a better listener. And so I could adopt the value of listening. One of my early other values was courage. And that positive attribute of courage is courageous. And then, of course, being in these rooms, right, we're all practicing vulnerability as a value. And that's one of the positive attributes, called vulnerable. So I was really digging it, and we got to talking some more. And I was just super grateful that she brought it up. So it only ended up enhancing my recovery because she was curious enough to read all the pages of the workbook. So my values and the patterns. What started to happen for me is I started to think, what choice do I make to handle different interactions prior to realizing that I could use my values? How do I find serenity in situations that continue to linger in my mind, where I'm, being really obsessive and having lots of discomfort? And then how do I quiet or work with my thoughts? How do I treat myself more lovingly, especially when my thoughts are so powerful? And what I'm getting better about now is using my values to get myself out of those sticky situations. And I'll just give you an example. I'm going to come off the screen again. So when I started looking at my values and really honing in on those, whether you call them positive attributes or values, it was actually the pandemic in 2020. And I was living with a partner at the time. And we were discovering that we were not a good fit. We were in lockdown. I was basically staying at home because I am an artist and I can work at home, but my partner was going to the hospital every day. And she was a respiratory therapist and literally seeing people die in front of her. And getting home, and the stress in our house was so intense, and I think she was shutting down emotionally. It was just not a good situation. So we decided to separate, but there was nowhere to go. I mean, we were in lockdown and I thought, wow, now what do I do? I'm actually breaking up with someone and finding I can't run anymore. I could no longer just pack up my car and go. So in some ways, I was forced to be in a situation that was not working and potentially contentious. And I thought about, well, what is it that I value? Well, one, my core first primary value is connection. And I'm like, I can practice connection, but how do I practice connection with someone I don't even get along with anymore? And I actually want to run away from, I don't want to live with her. I want to run out the door. And I realized, well, this is my opportunity to practice connection and to just do the minimal amount of connection that I feel I can do that's healthy in this situation. And we both agreed, let's try to create some sense of support while we're here together and just take care of each other, because there really were not a lot of options for me moving at that point. And then I thought, well, another value I have is listening. And you would think, wow, the last thing that I'd want to do is listen to somebody that I just really don't have any respect for anymore. But I told myself, as part of my recovery, because I had 4 years ago started going back to CoDA, I'm going to practice a lot of patience and listening. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time, even if we're both sitting in front of the television watching a program together, I'm just going to practice listening. And in listening and practicing that value, there was so much more serenity in the household. Like just paying attention to each other for even an hour really brought down the temperature of our arguments or our disagreements. And that is because I chose to reflect on my values, and the behaviors that came out of those reflections of those values were the things that helped me make it through about 4 months so that I could move on. And I couldn't have done it without CoDA. I was going to meetings every week, because even though I understood what my values were, or I had an inkling of what they were, I needed people to tell me how to behave, because my old ways of behaving when I feel under threat or unsafe were not healthy. They were not going to help me get through that 4 months. So that was my early days of really looking at my values and practicing my values in recovery. And we'll break in about 10 minutes here. So let me get back to the screen. So let's see here. So how do I quiet or work with my thoughts? That's my favorite one, is how do I treat myself more lovingly, especially when my thoughts are so powerful? And it's meditation. It's totally just getting quiet. It's that 11th step that we so often, who doesn't love a dog, right? It's that 11th step that I wasn't practicing. And the more that I practice meditation, the more that I could quiet my mind. It just like a pause in my thinking would show up in my interactions with others. And I would be able to say, wait a minute, I have these values that I can return to. I can use my values in this situation. But if I wasn't meditating, I don't think I could access my values as quickly as I do now. All right. So it's a process, right? It's a process to find the real me. And meditation, values exercises, talking with people in the program, talking to trusted friends, talking to people who see me can help me find my values if I'm not quite sure what they are. And my values will change all the time. So there's no hurry. You know, even if I were to choose that one value of connection and just see how that works in my life, that was enough. It worked. It helped me a lot, that which was connection. And it made sense it would be connection because this is what I do all the time. I go to meetings and I love going to meetings. I love meeting new people. So for me, connection is definitely my primary value. So I think next what I'm going to do, let's see here. All right, I'm going to talk about through lines, and I want you all to be thinking about your own life, because when we come back from break, I'm going to be asking you if you maybe discovered a value that you hadn't thought of before, and maybe you've never reflected on what I call through lines. Through lines, you know, it says from definitions I pulled off the internet, are a metaphor. A through line is a metaphor involving a line. You know, it's like the string or a rope that is connected through time. So over time, and it says here from the beginning of a story to its end. And, you know, my story is definitely not ended, but there is this through line. In my through line, I can access my memories of my childhood all the way through my young adulthood to now. And I can pull from memories that seem to, the positive ones, right, about me. I can pull from those memories and I can see who I am in a positive way. And even if I can't see all the way through my childhood, like if I forgot my childhood or I blocked it out, maybe I can see to my young adulthood. Or maybe I can see from the very first day I stepped into a meeting, I can start there and I can see and observe myself doing esteemable things, right? In order to raise our self-esteem, we do esteemable acts. And I can observe myself doing these things that really kind of stand out from the day to day. And they're the qualities and the positive attributes of who I am. And to think about that as a through line, that's those things that are consistent. It's like this next thing that says it's a focusing on a path. It's what has showed up on our path or my path in recovery that takes me from a beginning into an end, hopefully, if I'm consistent about my values, or I'm consistent about certain behaviors, or I'm consistent about positive attributes. And it's often these small acts. It's these small acts that maybe I don't think are important, but they're hugely important. It's maybe when I walk out the door, I say hello to my neighbors. I just don't walk by them. That is a huge act because a lot of people may not, or many people may not say hello. So it's these small actions that can also count. It doesn't have to be this big act. It's just the qualities of who we are, right? It's the qualities of who I am that tell me what my through line is and what my values might be around the characteristics of me. And this is the real me that I'm trying to dig up from in the recovery process. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so what I want you to be thinking about when we go on break is what are the positive attributes or values that have consistently shown up in your through line of your life, whatever, wherever you want to start. And what are the qualities or positive attributes that have defined your path? Or what are the small steps you are or have taken that may represent the characteristics of who you are? And as I've said before, it's so easy for me to beat myself up. So now I get to look back on my life and really see the positive qualities of me. And I want to challenge you to do that. And just when we come back, hopefully you'll want to share. Break time. Well, I want you to be thinking about that. Just one. See if you can come up with one so that when this my presentation is over today and our meeting is over. And by the way, I will have sharing time for you all. I'm not going to take up an entire 2 hours. But when the meeting is over, it would be really wonderful if you could put that one value that you came up with when you thought about your through line and maybe put it by your tea or your coffee maker and just see how it might fit in with your program and the tools that you use in CoDA. So what do values have to do with a higher power? Hopefully, what we've talked about, or what I've talked about and what you shared so far has made it clear that values are part of the tools of recovery. And for me, I've added it, right? I've added my values as one of the tools that I've listed before. And I'm kind of thinking, what if, oh wait, let me see, make sure I'm not jumping ahead too fast here. Because all this stuff on values and higher power actually gets kind of murky for me. Like there's this very blurry line. I think I'm going to wait. Okay, I'm going to just follow the screen. But as you can see, that middle, like that how to has now been filled not only with the wisdom of the CoDA Fellowship, but meetings, listening, trying new actions, service, sponsorship, meditation, prayer, feeling my feelings, all the CoDA tools that we talk about, and my values are now a part of how I move from codependency into recovery. And slowly listening and doing a daily inventory when I don't really act from my values. So let me just tell you another story really quickly, and then we'll move on. So, okay, so recently, and this is 4 years of me looking at my values and trying to figure out what is important to me, what do I value? I now have a list, I think, of 6 different values, and they have shown themselves to me in the situations I've found myself in the ways that I've noticed my new behaviors in recovery have been. A lot of things have given me clues about how I consistently am drawn to certain behaviors and beliefs and values about the world around me. And connection continues to be my primary value. So the other day when I had a conversation with my brother, I really needed him to answer a question for me. And when he called me after 2 weeks of not calling me, after I requested a call and it took him 2 weeks, he was very upset. And I kept trying to get him to answer my question. It was a very simple question, but he kept talking about something else. And I was not listening. So I wasn't following my value of listening. I had made a connection finally, but then things got worse and he hung up on me. And I could have thought, well, how rude is that? That he hung up on me when I kept trying to redirect him to my question just to get my question answered. And I was a little bit shocked and stunned and felt kind of numb. And I was able to, because I also value compassion, I was able to pretty quickly get to a compassionate place and think, wow, what is going on with him that he would choose to hang up on me? He must be in a pretty bad spot. I've hung up on people before, and when I've done it, I've not been in the best state of mind. So with my 10th step, I get to do my own inventory and promptly admit when I'm wrong. I spent a month just letting things cool down for him and a month of trying to figure out, what do I do next? And in that month, I was hoping he would call me back or text me, but he did not. And so in that month, I realized, well, I thought, what are my values? Well, my values are connection, listening. I wasn't all that great about listening to him because he was trying to tell me something, and compassion. And the thing about my brother is that he is a doctor and he now has 2 teenagers he's bringing up. And raising teenagers, I love teenagers, but there's a certain level of insanity, I think, that shows up in households when there are teenagers around. And my brother's a doctor and he lost his partner at his business. So he's on his own with all of these patients. He is highly stressed out. There's something really awful going on at our daughter's school. I thought, okay, I can cut him some slack. And then I thought I wasn't listening very well. And my brother happened to be stressed out and he never tells me why he's stressed. And he was trying to tell me, something. So I said, okay, my values are connection and compassion. I can do compassion. But what I decided to do to sort of smooth things out a little bit is I said, I can own my part. I wasn't listening that great. So I got out a card. I wrote him a card, said, when we talked, I could tell you were upset and I really wasn't listening. I was trying to get you to answer a question. And clearly you had other things on your mind. And I hope you're doing okay. So I own my part. And I didn't say, however, that it was okay for him to continue to hang up on me. So I put that in the mail and I still haven't heard from him. It's been another month, but it's okay. It's okay because he's teaching me that I have to have acceptance that my brother won't be able to do this kind of work with me, and that I need to find and be with friends who can hear me and family who can hear me and have a conversation with me. He's just not capable of doing that. And I have to accept that. And it broke my heart. Like, it really broke my heart. But I was able to draw from my values and decide how it is I could best act. And I was able to call recovery friends and also figure out how I could best act and behave in that situation. So that's an example of how my values have not only updated themselves, but I actually use them on a regular basis. Okay, let's go back. So I think what I'm trying to say, and it's one of the things that we talked about earlier, is that this is a dynamic process of finding out who I really am. And that, my values, I add to my values, I take away from my values, they change over time. And I learn a new way of being. Like, I learn I know how to respond if I sit in reflection and even in meditation with my values. And if I, especially when I meditate on connection, I'm like, how do I do this? All right, connection. And if I can be really mindful about returning to those values, then often an answer will arise or a question that I can ask another recovery person about what I do next in a situation that's really sticky. So now I ask myself, well, can my values continue to guide me in my recovery? And are my values even synonymous with my higher power? Like, are my values really my HP? So when we go back to this, to your participation, right? What is your HP? What is HP to you? Can any of these or all of these or some of these be a value that you can hone in on when you're in a situation that's difficult? You know, it's our understanding of higher power, I think, can not only work with values, but our values can work with our higher power, whatever that is. Like I can see, for example, surprise as being a value that would be a letting go. You know, if my value is surprise with my brother, I'm going to let him surprise me. I'm just going to let it go and just see what happens next. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that. I just was hoping that, you know, with your list that maybe you could see some potential for coming up with a value that it's something that you can take into your meditation to get you through some difficult situations in your recovery. All right. Let's see. So some of my final thoughts are what I've been learning about letting my values guide me is that there may be too much of a good thing, or and I also want to talk about compassion for others. But with too much of a good thing, what I'm talking about as an example, well, let me just show you the next slide. I found this on the Connections Recovery Stories and on CoDA.org. And it was, it's titled, How Can Love Go Bad? Isn't love supposed to be one of those universal eternal values, right? I hear people talk about it. Love this and love that and be loving. Do people even know what it is like to live with someone who doesn't want to be loved? Either everyone in my life is sick or my love went bad somehow, but how does love go bad? This doesn't even seem to be my problem, but my therapist told me to go to CoDA anyway. How frustrating. Am I sort of love drunk? Is it very hard to find an answer to this question? It is very hard to find an answer to this question. How is it possible that anyone could ever love too much if love is such a good thing? Anonymous. So the thing that I learned about connection as my primary value is I can actually connect too much and that I need recovery. Just like this anonymous writer says, is it possible to love too much? Love is a wonderful value. And I think connection also is awesome. But I guess my grandfather's right when he said all things in moderation. And CoDA kind of helps me with that, finding a balance of connecting because I love to connect. I find so much value in people connecting like we're doing here. There's so much healing potential. But I also need boundaries. I need balance. And I'm learning that even though my value is awesome, like love is awesome, but there's, you know, limits, there's wisdom, at creating some balance around our values. So values can be both great and have some negative aspects. And it's up to us to figure out as we're discovering our real self, like what is it that works for me and what is it that's not working, and then modulate. The last thing I want to say is actually the next to the last thing is what I've learned in this program and in examining my values is I have learned that it is a process to find out what I find most meaningful. And when I can move through my own life and find out what's most meaningful, and I can see the ways I maybe didn't really align very well with my values, I can give myself these days, I can give myself a lot of forgiveness and patience. And as I do that for myself, as I'm kinder to myself for not being that great of a connector or not listening very well or really missing the boat on compassion, I start to notice I can give others the same grace and give people compassion when they too are on their path trying to find their way. So as I do my work, it really does allow for a lot more compassion and acceptance of others where they're at on their path. You know, what their through line looks like is hopefully they'll discover, you know, wonderful things about their own through line in this life that I've been able to discover from this program. And then finally, with I think that the thought I want to leave you with is to find one value and focus on that and see how you apply it to your life in a consistent way. I would suggest that, well, I would like to say that my experience was that it was very halting for me and awkward at first, these values. And I really kind of had to try to, you know, work with the words and the ideas to fit myself into those. And it's okay if, you know, the first 5 you choose end up not being the most important 5 in your life. It's just getting started is a lot like for me exploring what is my higher power. You know, it's the same thing. It's like this discovery and exploration process for me. And it just so happens that right now in my recovery, my higher power is the search for my values and aligning myself with my values and being consistent and using my values, my own inner wisdom to be a better person. So thank you for listening. And I hope that you found something helpful and useful in that information I gave you.
Okay. Thank you, Denali.